And Deepak, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. We were just going through your latest tweet on Vodafone Idea. Sure, it raises about 18,000 crores through the FPO, it's provided that it does manage to get fully subscribed. But that said, you suggest that it may not be enough, and in the long run, it's going to need a lot more than just these funds to go on with its business. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Yes. So what happened was after the AGR case and spectrum commitments that they have deferred payments for the past spectrum and for the past AGR dues and all of that stuff, and capitalized the interest in terms of giving the government shares. The government owns 33% of the company now, roughly, and the promoters own 50%, or a little bit less than that, I think. But here is where it gets complicated because the deferment happens till October 2025. That's next year, 2020. Next year, October is when they have to start paying back whatever they've said they've deferred. Part of it is spectrum payments, and part of it is going to be AGR dues. Now they have estimated, and in their own DRHP, that the amount of money they have to pay is 30,000 crores roughly for next financial year. That means starting October 25 onwards, they will have to pay 30,000 crores. And then after that, 40,000 crores per year for 5 years, FY27 to FY31. So that is effectively a fairly large cash flow out. They don't. They're going to have struggle to make that cash flow from their current investments, and their equity is already a negative. I think negative 100,000 crore plus. So they're a fairly large number. This 20,000 crores that they're raising is going to be very little to bring their net worth back to positive. Remember, banks also cannot really lend to you if your net worth is already negative. So for instance, if I go in and say, listen, I have 5 years of losses, my shareholder equity is negative 5,000 crores, will a bank give me even 100 crores? Answers no. So the question then will be, then a bank will say, listen, I can give you this money, but I'll have to give it to on the guarantee of another entity. And I don't think the Birlas really want to, put their other entities stake or give guarantees of something of that magnitude in order to get bank loans of any decent size. However, our country is very, it's very the world works very differently for the Birlas versus for the rest of the world, for the rest of India at least. And so it may be able to pull off something in the near term, but in the long term, think about it, 30,000 crores per year of next year, 40,000 crores after that, every year. It's very difficult to imagine how this company will survive. And as a disclosure, we are invested in their competitors. So their competitors stand to benefit if something, does not happen well with Vodafone. So I'm biased. But I find this a very difficult proposition to think about from a cash flow perspective. Essentially, what you're doing is you're giving money to the company that will almost directly straight go back to the government. People are thinking that the government will convert the rest of their obligations to equity, but they won't because already 33% is with the government. If the government converts even, say, at current valuations of about 70,000 crores, if they convert the rest of, say, 15,000 crores out of the 30,000, the next 30,000, and converts 50,000 to equity, the Vodafone will become a PSU. Because then the government will own more than 50%, then all sorts of rules apply. I don't think that is desirable from Vodafone perspective, from a government of India perspective. Then they have to figure out what it means for support and all that stuff. So I don't think this is workable. The government can't write off the dues because if you write off the dues, everybody else is going to come and complain and saying, excuse me, why do you write off Vodafone dues but not my dues? It doesn't make any sense. So it's not an easy game to play in. It's not going to be useful for people. I mean, from a shareholder equity standpoint, it sounds like one of the most difficult investments to make. We like telecom, but honestly, we think the survivors will be the other two, and perhaps maybe another player that may come in once there's enough weakness in Vodafone.
Right. Good afternoon, Mr. Shenoy. Smriti joining in here as well. So a couple of things here. So the company seems to be banking on something like a tariff hike. Now, there is an expectation that there's going to be an industry-wide tariff hike post-elections. And Vodafone Idea is talking about 2 tariff hikes in the next 3 years itself. However, of course, even if you take a 15 to 20% or even 20 to 5% of a tariff hike, that still doesn't seem enough. And these FPO proceeds, they have talked about how this will not be used for payment to the government, the spectrum dues as well. But a couple of things that they're banking on seems like that after they're able to put in this FPO money into capex, they're going to able to have more subscribers back. The churn has been very high till now. So that's one thing. They're also banking on a curative petition that's been filed in the Supreme Court for recalculation of these AGR dues. A brokerage is talking about how 50% of that can be, they won't have to pay that sort of 50%. And of course, if that recalculation happens, that happens industry-wide. So these are a couple of things. They're also talking about some revenue numbers, how they plan to go and increase their revenue in the next 2 years itself. So a couple of things they're banking on. Do you think that's kind of a way for the company to move forward? And then they'll talk about debt once they have subscribers coming in, expansion of 4G, 5G happening in. Then maybe they can have go and get some debt based on that.
I'll come to the debt question first. How does a bank lend to a company with negative shareholder equity? That's why they don't have bank loans. They have only some 4,500 or 7,000 crores of bank loans. All the remaining debt, which is mentioned on their books, is either a lease liability, small amount, or the government liability, which is the largest amount. It's 1 lakh plus crores or 1,60,000 crores, something like that. So getting a bank loan will be difficult from a perspective of, boss, why are you giving this company, which has negative 160,000 crores of shareholder equity, any loans, when the promoter is only going to put in 2,000 crores? That's all he's putting in this whole 20,000 crore issue. 18,000 crores coming from the FPO and 2,000 is coming from the promoters. That's it. Vodafone is putting zero. The government is putting zero. So there is no more support from the largest shareholders in the company. Roughly 83% of the shareholders, which is held by the government plus the Vodafone and Idea, they are not putting in any significant amount of money. How does a bank or a financial institution get confidence that this company will be a going concern going forward? I mean, even with this 20,000 crore fundraise, sounds extremely difficult. But the rest of it, I think those are like a little bit of lottery tickets in the sense of, oh, the Supreme Court may come with a favorable order. The Supreme Court has not come with favorable orders for the last 7 years. I mean, assuming that the next one will be favorable, I understand it can happen. But that's like betting on a horse that hasn't won 7 times and then saying that, oh no, it's a fitter horse now, it will win. Possible if you know well enough and all that, but who can predict what what a court will say and what logic may be used? I don't think the logic that will work will be something like, oh, if you charge this much, then we'll all go bankrupt. Therefore, you shouldn't charge it. I don't think a court will listen to that. But a court may listen to the fact that, listen, maybe you've done a mistake in the calculations. Remember, they've gone twice and said, listen, there's been a mistake in the calculations. They said, no, there's been no mistake in the calculation. This is how it's supposed to be calculated. Therefore, banking on the Supreme Court case, fine. If you're doing that, you should know that you're betting on a lottery and you should do this. Tariff hikes. Tariff hikes have okay, 2 players are profitable, 1 player is not profitable. The 2 players that are profitable have actually increased tariffs from 2022 December to now, roughly 45 to 50% in different ways. So what used to be a 2,000 rupee annual charge is now a 3,000 rupee annual charge. I'm saying this from a user perspective. I have both Jio and Airtel SIM cards. So therefore, I am aware of what the costs are and how they've changed over the last 2 years.
Right.
So that has already happened. Now to imagine that the hikes will be another 25 or 50%, at some point you have to ask whether, the competition will really want this just to save you. Would Bharti and Jio increase their tariffs just to save Vodafone? I think expecting a 20-25% may be okay, but expecting a 50-100% is close to impossible.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Shenoy, for joining us today and for your views on Vodafone Idea. It was great talking to you.
Well, yes, that's an interesting conversation that's going on as far as Vodafone Idea is concerned. Smriti, again, thank you for joining us and taking us through that conversation as well. Some very pertinent points made and a lot of challenges up ahead for Vodafone Idea. And as Deepak has mentioned, that there are a lot of unknown unknowns as far as Vodafone Idea is concerned, also known unknowns, but it's not something to bank on going forward.